Hello friend, this is Ryan Hicks of TaughtToProfit.com, and today I want to talk about the power of planting the right seeds in your mind. You know, Earl Nightingale had a very famous lecture that was called The Strangest Secret. And the strangest secret was that man becomes what he thinks about most of the time. And in that he talks about how a farmer, he can have one seed that's good and one seed could be deadly nightshade. The ground does not care what he plants. It will reap the harvest of what he plants. And your mind is the same way. When you go through life, are you tilling the soil of the ground of your mind? Bringing in greater harvest of goodness, of God's blessing in your life by focusing on the good, by following Philippians 4:8 and only thinking about those things that are lovely and of good report. What many people do is they are wallowing around in the world's negativity. They're watching the news. And what does the news bring to you? Negative, toxic nightshade seeds. Those things that spring up in your heart with harvests of more negativity, more bad things, more terrible evils. I even one time went through a news website just to see and count. And it was 95% of the headlines, and there were probably 100 different links you could click to different articles. And 95% of them were negative. Some of them were horrifically negative. Like stuff like, well, economists say it's going to be better this year, but here's why it's not. It's like, what? Just tremendously down, depressing, negative, low vibration material that if you plant that stuff in your heart, what can you get besides a bad experience? And I'll give you an example of this. When the lockdowns were going down, I heard people all over the place talking about, oh, it's so bad. Oh, our economy's going to fail. It's just so terrible. All these businesses are going to go out of business. And you know what I experienced? Because I wasn't acting like that. I wasn't talking that. I wasn't believing for that. Not a single time. I was experiencing the most prosperous year in many years. While other people were talking doom and gloom, they were talking about, oh, it's so awful. They were talking about how they couldn't do this and couldn't do that. I found workarounds. I found ways to make things work and made even more profit. Now, those people could have done the same thing, but they didn't. They chose the negative. They chose to repeat what the news is telling them. They chose to repeat what their fellow neighbor was telling them. And their neighbor was getting the same negativity from the news. So whether you watch the news yourself personally or you're listening to somebody who's negative, you're still getting the same doctrine. Their same belief in evil. Their same belief in problems. They're not talking up the goodness of God. The news isn't telling you about how good things are going to be happening and good things are on the way. Even if they do, they have to taint it with such negativity that it chokes out any of the word that could possibly grow in your heart. So I want to encourage you today that you purposely and diligently guard your heart. That you make sure that what you're putting in your heart is good seeds that you want to see harvest of. So this would cause you to think differently. Am I going to watch that negative news? No, because I don't want that harvest. Am I going to read that negative news article? No, I don't want that harvest. Am I going to talk to that coworker that's always negative and always babbling the news of the day? No, because that's not going to be the harvest that I want to receive. Now with people it's a little different because you could turn off the news. You don't have to read the news at all or watch the news or listen to it. But what about a coworker? You have to talk to them. Here's the thing. Redirect the conversation to something good. And also if you're at work, if that doesn't work and they just keep going back to negativity, which is very likely because they're negative people, then just say, I have work to do. I would be happy to talk to you later after work. And then you could talk to them about the good things then. And if they don't want to talk about it then, be done with them. They'll find somebody else to talk to. Those kind of people who just want to tell you about the world's negativity and the bad things of the day, they're going to talk to everybody about it anyway. And you may say, well, what if they don't like me anymore? Who cares? They're negative people. That's not the people you want on your side. But you know what you might find too? Is some of those negative people are in a rut. They're just in this habit of doing this. And maybe if you take the initiative to redirect the conversation to things good, you can, even if they're a nice enough person, they're not like some really nasty person, but they're just negative and doom and gloom, but they're not like going to attack you or anything or just cause you problems. You could just say, hey, listen, I would like to talk about positive things. Can we talk about that instead? They probably have never even thought about it. Most people are just on autopilot. They're not thinking. They can think, but they're not thinking. They're just going through life, doing what they've done. It seems to make sense to them, so they do it. And they're not sitting down and thinking, you know what, today when I get to work, I'm going to talk about this negative thing, that negative thing, this bad thing, that doom and gloom over there. They're not thinking any of that. They're just thinking, oh, this is interesting. Let me tell people about it. So you can rise up in your boldness of faith and just say, hey, listen, I want to talk about only things that are lovely and of good report. Only things that are good and true and praiseworthy and worth thinking about. They might actually listen to you. I've had people where I've done that before who were acquaintances. They weren't friends or anything. And I said, listen, I only like to talk about good things. I know you know a lot. Maybe you know something good you can talk about. And you know what happened? At first they were a little like taken back, and then they were, well, you know, I heard this story. They had good things. They had good things to talk about, praiseworthy things to talk about. They just never talked about them because no one else cared. Everyone else was fixated on the negativity. And that person is very interesting because I've heard of people say, oh no, here comes so-and-so. He's got something bad to say. But with me, he has nothing bad to say because I laid out the foundation of what I want to talk about. He just likes talking. He's lonely. He's an older gentleman, retired. He's a widower. So he just wants to talk. You direct the conversation to the good and just be blunt. I knew he's a nice guy. He wasn't harmful. He wasn't trying to do harm. And so when I told him what I wanted to talk about, the things I want to talk about, he was happy to do it. So don't give up on people. There are people out there who might be some of the most negative people you see, and they just haven't had the opportunity to open up to talk about the good things of God, to talk about things that are lovely and good report. And so you want to plant those good seeds in your heart, you're going to have to redirect those conversations with other people. And if they don't listen and they don't even care, they just want to keep being negative, you're going to have to cut those conversations short and get back to your work, get back to whatever you're doing. Listen, your life should be so full, you don't have time to babble all day anyway. Especially when you're at work, you're getting paid to work, not to talk to somebody about the negative news of the day. So you can always redirect that back to just, I got to get back to work. It's great seeing you again. I hope you're doing well. And get back to work. But as you go throughout your day, make sure that you're planting those good seeds that are harvest you want to receive. When you're listening to some podcast and they're just going into negativity. And I don't care what the negativity is about, because sometimes people will say, well, the negativity is true and it's keeping me informed because it's some negativity about some politician or the government or whatever. It's still planting the same negative harvest seeds in your heart. Is that what you want? Is that the harvest you want to receive? I bet not. So you have to purposely and diligently and strictly moderate what comes into your heart. And don't allow those things that are negative. Don't allow those things that are bringing you down. Don't allow those things that would tell you that there's limitation, there's lack, or there's this problem, or there's that problem. Stop letting that stuff in your heart. Your life is a set of experiences that you're experiencing that are a direct result of your heart, what you're allowing in there. That's festering, it's growing, and it's creating a harvest. When you put negativity in, you're both planting negative seeds and you're throwing poison on your good seeds. And you're causing yourself to have worse harvest. You might have a tiny bit of good spring up. Some of the seeds survived from all the onslaught of negativity you've been allowing in your heart, but most of it withers away and dies off. But then you have a huge harvest of negativity because it's what you've been allowing. My friend, take up this mindset today that whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're allowing in your heart, whatever you're listening to or watching or viewing or doing, that you're making sure it is focused on the good. And if it's not, redirect it to something good, or stop doing it completely and get into something good. My friend, I pray this is a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.